大家好，今天呢，我给大家录一期计算神经科学的一些课外知识的一些视频。那么，计算神经科学呢，它有一个姐妹学科叫做认知科学。其实，认知科学呢，大家可以简单了解一下，它实际上是 George Miller 还有这个 Chomsky 他们在上个世纪50、60年代的时候，一起提出的一个概念。后来呢，经过几十年的演化呢，形成了一个比较不错的一个学科啊，它叫做cognition，就叫做研究这个认知的一个学科。这里的这个学科呢，一开始他提出了一个很重要的一个融合的一个概念，分别是6个学科进行了一个融合，其中呢包括一些像心理学、神经科学、人工智能、语言学、哲学等，我记得应该是6个学科吧，我说了几个，5个，反正这是一个很综合的一个学科。但是呢，需要说明的一点啊，就虽然它是一个很综合的学科，但不代表研究这个学科的工作者呢，他需要具备全部6个学科的一个知识。当然了，随着时间的发展，还有更多的学科并进来，一起呢，通过自己的一些认识和方法来研究认知这个东西。至于认知是什么啊？如果要是大家下一个定义的话，可能会有不同的版本。如果你要下一个操作性定义的话，那每一个学科也能贡献它自己的力量，对吧？我为什么要介绍一些课外的知识呢？尤其是我这个知识实际上是关于认知科学的知识，是依托于这本书的，是一个认知科学的字典。对，我今天介绍的呢，实际上是其中 字母 A 到字母 E 的其中一部分，我认为比较重要的一个概念。我可以跟大家一起回顾一下啊。这个里头，我呢个人实际上是偏向于神经科学项的，所以我在选取这个字典当中的不同的解释的时候，其实某一个词条呢，它可以从很多个方向进行解释啊，可以从很多的方向进行解释。所以我摘选的时候，实际上也是从神经科学为主来摘选的。然后其次呢，是偏向这个心理学以及人工智能一些，偶尔会涉及一些哲学以及语言学的概念，或者说从这两个角度吧去进行解读。如果有这个哲学背景或者是语言学背景的这个小伙伴啊，看到这个视频的时候，可以从另外一个侧面做一个简单的一个了解。关于同一个词条，这本字典的优点就在于它会从好几个方向进行解释，而且它不是一个怎么说呢？不是一个词条只有几句话的解释，而是一个词条可以有成篇文章的一个解释，就非常非常的厉害，非常非常的具体。这本书呢，实际上也是在2004年的时候出版，由法国的一个专家牵头来撰写的。好，就是我们看到的这一本书。好，那我如何来帮大家回顾呢？我只是，我才疏学浅啊，只是帮大家摘选了一些我认为在神经科学领域以及计算神经科学领域可能会比较重要的一些呃几个学科都会遇到的一些词条，大家可以简单的和我一起回顾一下。第一个是数因推断。Abduction is the reasoning process by which we initially limit the number of hypotheses likely to explain a given phenomenon. Abductive reasoning, or abduction, is making a probable conclusion from what you know. If you see an abundant bowl of hot soup on the table, you can use abduction to conclude the owner of the soup is likely returning soon. 第二个是激活和抑制。Activation refers to a rapid increase in the excitability of the nervous system. Inhibition refers to a decrease or slowing down of the system's spontaneous activity. 第三个是老化。Aging is a process that leads not only to physical and physiological weakening, see neuroscience below, but also to slow deterioration of mental functions. The deterioration of intellectual performance with age is accompanied by morphological and metabolic alterations, presumably physiological, whose link to degenerative dementias such as Alzheimer's disease still poses many problems. 下一个是动物认知。The study of animal cognition has two major branches, comparative psychology and ethology. In the psychology of cognition, they conduct cross-species comparisons in the laboratory to detect the general common cognitive mechanisms responsible for the intake and processing of information from the environment. 下面一个是 causality。causality 我这块没有摘选更多的解释，哲学背景的同学呢可能会读十几本书关于这个 causality， 所以我这里不再做赘述了。但是因果关系一直是科学发展的重中之重，希望大家多在 causality 这里下功夫。Causality is a relationship between two elements, one of which, the cause, produces an effect on the other. Cognitivism, 认知主义。Cognitivism is a classic paradigm in cognitive science and can be defined as a combination of the functionalist and the computational representational theses. It acknowledges the existence of mental states, each of which is identical to a physical state. However, the type of a mental state is determined by its functional role, that is, by its causal relations with other mental states, stimuli, and behaviors. 下面一个是 communication。communication 我记得在这本字典里头从很多个方向都做了阐述，大家可以查阅一下 communication 在不同角度的阐述是如何的啊。我这里头摘了应该是有神经科学和 AI。 The term communication refers to all processes by means of which information is transmitted from one entity to another. In cognitive neuroscience, two levels of communication can be distinguished. The first pertains to mechanisms that transmit information between neurons. These mechanisms are either excitatory or inhibitory. The second pertains to mechanisms that transmit information between the cognitive subsystems of the brain's functional architecture, each of which can be seen as a neural network. 下面一个是 computational analysis. Computational analysis is a logical analysis of the qualities required of any system, whether biological or artificial, to accomplish a given task. The computational approach, which uses computational analysis, is a key element of cognitive neuroscience. A basic postulate is that each particular processing subsystem is dedicated to executing one of the steps specified in the computational analysis. The subsystems are organized into a coherent whole that forms what is called a functional architecture. 下面一个是连接主义。连接主义呢，这个学神经科学、学这个 AI 的小伙伴都应该，包括学这个心理学的同学啊，都应该是如数家珍了。这个，比如说连接主义，在大家学心理学史的时候啊，不知道大家能蹦出多少个学霸出来。历史上的学霸啊，当然还有谁呢？还有比如说，像我们在研究神经网络的时候，啊，从80年代中期开始，研究神经网络的时候，连接主义的思想也是大红大紫，对吧？包括现在连接主义的一些模型啊、思潮啊，都还在。大家有空的话可以去查一查桑代克啊，这些人，就是学心理学史的这些小伙伴们，可以去查一查连接主义，真的是现在还会有很重要的应用。The connectionist paradigm retains the idea of representation. The states of the world are represented by the states of a connectionist network, within which knowledge is distributed across the connection weights. Cognition is seen as the parallel distributed processing over the whole network. Connectionist simulations of cognitive processes via artificial neural networks are a critical tool in cognitive neuroscience. Simulation studies are conducted to test the computational or logical validity of the proposed processing models. 下面一个是意识啊，意识也是一个很难定义，完了，但是大家都在研究的一个非常高级的一个东西，就是非常相比于低层次的一些认知功能来说，意识实际上是一个大融合。We might simply say that unlike other mental activities, consciousness apparently cannot be described as a functional architecture composed of information processing subsystems. It would seem instead to emanate from the coordinated functioning of many specialized subsystems. 下面一个是 constraint. Constraint is a critical concept in cognitive neuroscience, as in psychology, where it is found in the expression constraint satisfaction. Constraint satisfaction corresponds to a process of matching against the representations stored in memory. 下面一个是建构主义。One of the greatest figures of constructivism in the 20th century was the Genevan psychologist Jean Piaget. His theory, which refuses empiricism as well as nativism, describes the intelligence as the most general form of coordination of a subject's actions and operations, constructed through the subject's logical reconstruction and restructuring of the environment. 下面一个是控制，控制也是有非常非常多的角度的解读，在这本书里头。To control behavior, the central nervous system has about 10 raised to the power 12 neurons at its disposal, all connected to each other in networks. In cognitive neuroscience, there are three fundamental questions related to control. The first concerns how the brain controls our behavior. The second question concerns where and how this control actually takes place in the brain. The third question is trickier. What are the intimate control mechanisms that take effect at the neuron level? For the tasks of interest to artificial intelligence, the term control is used here to refer to the mechanism that decides what actions to carry out at each step of the solving process. That is, what knowledge to use, how to use it, and what aspect of the problem requires attention。下面一个是这个是我选的这个 counterfactual 啊，这个实际上，更常见是在哲学领域，但是为什么要选它呢？啊，有的小伙伴如果对这个贝叶斯统计比较熟悉的话，counterfactual reasoning 或 counterfactual conditional proposition，这个实际上也是一个和 material reasoning material inference 相对应的一个分支，对吧？所以这个还是很不一样的。在做贝叶斯统计的时候，包括你们做设计实验的时候，也是会用到的 counterfactual。In a counterfactual conditional proposition, one considers a situation that does not come to be in order to derive from it the consequences it would have had in the world where it did come to be. An example of a counterfactual conditional is if you had studied, you would have passed your exam. This type of a conditional is different from the material conditional, P implies Q, which is true if P is false or if Q is true. In other words, material conditionals are true when the antecedent is false and the consequent is true, whereas counterfactual conditionals are not. 下面一个是创造力。创造力呢，实际上是这个世纪的永恒，包括之前的永恒的一个主题啊。所以，如果喜欢研究创造力的这个同学，需要注意两点，一个是新，还有一个是有用。就是大家可以查字典查这个 adaptive 的这个含义啊，绝对是有用，就是有价值、有用才叫创新。Creativity is the capacity to produce something that is both new and adaptive. In linguistics, creativity is related to generativity. Differentiation 这个实际上有很多个含义啊，我查了一些字典啊，这个 differentiation 实际上在心理学、在神经科学、在生物学、在物理学、在人工智能包括一些就是人类学，就是很多的一个学科啊，它都有不同的界定。但是我摘选的实际上还是和咱们认知有关系的这一部分。Sensory discrimination of differences among stimuli, for example, wines that at first taste are identical may with experience be readily distinguished. A conditioning process in which a limited range of behavior types is achieved through selective reinforcement of only some forms of behavior, also called response differentiation. Discourse 这是语篇，语篇的话，实际上在心理学里头也是很常见的啊，在语言学里也是很常见的。Discourse is generally understood to mean any verbal production, whether written or oral, related to the context in which it was produced. 下面一个是 domain specificity. According to a long-standing and widespread conception of how the mind works, humans are endowed with a set of general reasoning abilities that are called upon in all cognitive tasks, irrespective of their content. A competing view contends that, on the contrary, there are many cognitive capabilities, each specialized in the processing of certain types of information, and that every domain of knowledge has its own specific principles that dictate its organization and structure. A domain, then, can be defined as a body of knowledge that enables one to identify and interpret a set of phenomena assumed to share certain properties and to form a general type. This knowledge serves as a guide when tasks involving perception, encoding, memorization, or reasoning are being performed on that class of phenomena. Dynamic system 这个实际上是每一个做这个计算神经科学的这个小伙伴们 都应该如数家珍的一个概念啊，包括学EE 出身的一些小伙伴，这实际上就是是用微分方程来刻画一个动态的系统，而这个里头呢，为什么要用微分方程呢？实际上它是随时间变化的一个系统，所以它的整个变化的一个效果可以通过这个，如果是随机过程的话，它实际上是可以通过呃这个积分来刻画它的积累效应的。所以这个实际上是咱们计算神经科学的一个，就是说几个特征之一啊，包括研究脑科学也是，它是一个跟时间非常非常相关联的一个系统。好，咱们看这个词条啊，dynamic system。A system that evolves over time. Such systems are typically modeled by equations that describe how the states of parts of the system vary with time, according to rules that govern how the various parts affect each other. Often, the state is composed of many components and particles, each having a location, speed, and other relevant properties, such as mass or charge, whose behavior is governed by differential equations. A dynamic system differs from a differential equation in that it considers not just a single trajectory coming from an initial point, but a set of all possible trajectories within a given dynamic. A dynamic system is continuous or discrete, depending on whether the dynamic is defined by a differential equation, perhaps statistic, or by a difference equation, in discretized time. A trajectory attractor is the set of topologically and infinitely recurring points. 下面一个是 emergence. Self-organized dynamic systems, which are composed of a very large number of interacting entities, exhibit global properties that the basic entities in them do not possess. These properties are called emergent properties. They're generally dependent upon the spatial-temporal patterns generated by interactions between the basic entities. Examples of such patterns are pane-glass phenomena in physics, neurosynchrony assemblies responsible for categorization in cognitive neuroscience, and epidemiological representation phenomena in anthropology. 下面一个是认识论。The term epistemology is synonymous with the philosophy of science, or refers to the theory of knowledge. 好，这个就是我摘选的一些词条，也许会在几个学科当中都会出现，而且它会在认知科学当中起到一些就是常识性的一些作用。所以我希望大家能和我一起来回顾一下这些概念。好，这期视频做到这里，感谢大家，再见。